When I found out my boyfriend was cheating, I didn't cry. I smiled. Because that was the moment I decided to play the long game. I told him I forgave him, but what I really did was plan the perfect revenge. I remember that day like a movie I never wanted to watch again. It was raining, the kind of rain that doesn't cleanse, it just drowns. I sat in his apartment, scrolling through his phone because he'd left it unlocked. I wasn't even looking for anything, just checking a song we'd shared. But then, a notification popped up. Can't wait to see you tonight. At first I froze. My thumb hovered over the message like it could change what I saw. I opened the chat. Dozens of messages, pictures, jokes, words that used to belong to me. And suddenly the sound of my heartbeat was louder than the rain outside. He came out of the shower, smiling, his hair dripping onto the floor. He saw me holding his phone, saw my face, and for a split second, his expression cracked. That's when I knew it wasn't a misunderstanding. He didn't even ask what was wrong. He just sighed. I can explain, he said, but he couldn't, because there's no explanation for betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at him and said, "It's okay." He blinked, confused. Maybe he thought I was too hurt to react, but in that moment, something inside me switched. The love I had for him didn't disappear. It transformed into something colder, sharper. That night, I went home and stared at the ceiling. Every text replayed in my mind. Every lie, every excuse he'd ever made. But instead of crying, I started to smile. Because for the first time, I wasn't the broken one. He was. He just didn't know it yet. Forgiving him was the easiest lie I'd ever told. And it was the beginning of my favorite story, the one where I win. If you were in my place, would you have confronted him or stayed silent like I did? The next morning, I woke up and decided to play a role. The kind of role that would make him believe everything was fine. I wore the same perfume he once said smelled like home. I texted him, "Can we talk?" He replied almost instantly, "Please." I messed up. I'll do anything. When I met him, he looked exhausted. Puffy eyes, shaking hands, guilt written all over his face. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. We sat in that same cafe where we'd had our first date, the smell of coffee, the same song playing softly in the background. Everything felt like a cruel repeat of a moment that once meant love. He started to cry, saying how sorry he was, how it meant nothing, how he was scared of losing me. And that's when I realized something. People like him aren't scared of losing you. They're scared of losing your forgiveness. So I gave him exactly what he wanted. I reached across the table, touched his hand, and said, "I forgive you." He looked up, surprised, relieved, maybe even grateful. He thought that was the end of the story. But for me, it was only the beginning. From that day on, I played my part perfectly. I smiled when he looked at me. I laughed at his jokes. I even let him hold me at night like nothing had changed. But inside, I was taking notes. Every time he checked his phone, every time he worked late, every time he thought I wasn't watching, I was. I started collecting everything. Screenshots, messages, receipts, little pieces of truth he'd buried under his lies. Because if I was going to destroy him, I wanted to do it gently. The way you peel petals off a rose, one by one. And the funny thing? He believed me. Completely. He told his friends I was the most understanding girlfriend ever. He told his mom I was a keeper. Meanwhile, I was keeping score. There's a strange kind of calm that comes with pretending. Every smile becomes a secret. Every kiss becomes a countdown. He thought we were rebuilding trust. I was building something too. A quiet, flawless plan. By the time he said, "I don't know how I got so lucky to have you," I already knew exactly how unlucky he was about to become. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't always mercy. Sometimes, it's the sharpest weapon of all. Do you think pretending to forgive someone can ever be justified? Or is it just another form of betrayal? It's strange how easy it is to rebuild something fake. All it takes is a few smiles, a few soft words, and people start believing what you want them to. That's what I did. I became the girlfriend everyone envied, the one who took back her man after a rough patch, the one who looked like love had healed her. But healing wasn't what I wanted. I wanted proof and patience. He started trusting me again so quickly it was almost insulting. He gave me his passwords back, left his phone lying around like before, told me about his colleagues, the same ones he'd lied about seeing. I nodded, listened, and kept every detail stored like little threads of a web I was quietly spinning. I didn't need to trap him with anger. I needed him to walk into it himself, thinking it was love. So I began with small things. When he texted her, I didn't confront him. I just saved the screenshots. When he lied about working late, I didn't question it. I took photos of his car parked outside her apartment. Every lie was a puzzle piece, and I was almost done building the full picture. But revenge, I realized, isn't just about proof. It's about timing. So I waited. I smiled when he kissed my forehead. I thanked him when he brought me flowers. I even helped him plan his birthday party, because that was going to be the night everything started to unravel. He didn't know I'd invited a few special guests, people who knew his secrets as well as I did, including her, the girl he cheated with. I made it sound innocent, of course. "You should come," I'd told her over text. "He talks about you all the time." She didn't hesitate. People like her never do. In the days leading up to the party, I practiced every detail. My dress, my words, my smile. I wanted to look like forgiveness itself, calm, radiant, untouchable. Because nothing confuses a liar more than kindness. The night before his birthday, he hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for staying." And for the first time, I whispered something back, not out loud, but in my mind, "You'll wish I hadn't." As I drifted to sleep that night beside him, I could already see it. The moment his world would break the same way he broke mine. Except when it happened, I'd still be smiling. If you discovered someone's betrayal, would you rather expose them right away? Or wait until the perfect moment like she's doing? The night of his birthday was beautiful. Too beautiful for what was coming. The restaurant lights glowed like soft gold. The music floated in the background, and everyone looked so happy. He stood there, grinning, surrounded by people who thought we were the perfect couple. I stood beside him, hand in hand, playing my favorite role one last time. I'd spent weeks planning everything: the guest list, the decorations, even the cake design. But what mattered most were the invitations, because hidden among his coworkers, college friends, and family were the two people who didn't belong: her, the girl he'd been sneaking around with, and someone else, her boyfriend. Yes, she wasn't single either. I had found out weeks ago, scrolling through her photos. Her boyfriend looked so proud of her, just like I once looked at mine. So, I'd reached out to him, told him the truth, sent him everything: the screenshots, the photos, the lies. We became allies in silence. So, when he walked into that restaurant tonight, his expression told me he knew exactly what was about to happen. We didn't plan to expose them with yelling or drama. We planned to let the truth reveal itself, quietly, elegantly, like a knife wrapped in silk. The dinner went on, toasts were made, laughter filled the air. He looked so content, so comfortable in his illusion. I watched him talk to her across the table, the secret smirk they thought no one noticed. And I just smiled. Then, I stood up with my glass in hand. "Can I say something?" I asked. Everyone turned. He smiled at me lovingly, thinking I was about to praise him. "I just want to say how proud I am of you," I began softly. "You've been working so hard, and I'm lucky to have someone so committed." A few people clapped. He squeezed my hand. Then I added, still smiling, "Committed, in so many ways." His grip loosened. Her eyes darted away. Her boyfriend, sitting 2 seats over, cleared his throat and placed a photo on the table. It was of them, together. From a night they both claimed they were working late. Silence. Then, whispers. He looked at me, pale, shaking, speechless. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I just set my glass down and said, "I forgive you, both of you. Happy birthday." Then I walked away. Not angrily, not broken, just calm. The kind of calm that comes when you know you've already won. That was the last time I ever saw him as my boyfriend. From that moment on, he became just another lesson, and I was finally free. Would you have exposed him publicly like this, or kept it private? The morning after the party felt unreal. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, calls, screenshots, whispers. News travels fast when the truth finally gets a stage. His friends were divided. Some defended him, saying it was a misunderstanding. Others said they'd always suspected something. But none of that mattered. The one person who mattered most, him, didn't call. Not once. I guess shame is a silent thing. A week later, I saw him at the coffee shop near my office. He looked smaller somehow, like someone had taken the shine out of his smile. He walked up to me, his voice trembling. "Can we talk?" I nodded politely, but inside I already knew there was nothing left to say. He started with excuses, then guilt, then begging. "I lost everything that night," he said. And I almost laughed, because he didn't lose everything. He only lost the mask he wore. He asked me why I'd done it this way, why I didn't just confront him in private. So I looked at him, steady, calm, and said, "Because you didn't cheat in private. You lied in public." I just returned the favor. He didn't speak again. He just nodded, eyes down, and walked away. That should have been the end, but life doesn't cut ties that cleanly. A few days later, his mom called me. She'd always loved me, the good girlfriend. She said he hadn't been the same since the party, that he'd been spiraling, that maybe I should forgive him for real this time. Forgive him? It was almost funny, how people always expect women to be soft, to heal others even when they're the ones bleeding. But I wasn't cruel. I told her gently that I wished him peace. That was true. I didn't want revenge anymore. I already had closure. What I wanted now was peace for myself. Still, that night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his face, not the face from the betrayal, but the one at the party. The exact second he realized I'd beaten him at his own game. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt done. Because revenge doesn't heal. It just ends the story your way. And sometimes, that's enough. A few weeks later, I deleted every photo, every message, every trace of him from my life. I even changed my number. And when I finally pressed delete on the last picture of us, I whispered to myself, "You did it. You won." But deep down, I knew. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about finally being free from the game entirely. Do you think revenge brings peace, or just another kind of emptiness? After everything fell apart, I realized how much space he had taken up in my mind, in my life, in my time, even in my silence. So one morning, I woke up and decided to start over, not with someone else, with me. I cut my hair, not because I wanted a new look, but because I wanted to feel lighter. I deleted social media for a while. I stopped checking who was watching my stories or wondering what people thought. I stopped performing forgiveness. I stopped performing anything. At first, it was lonely. You don't realize how much noise a person adds to your life until they're gone. The messages, the calls, the good mornings that weren't really good. Suddenly, the silence was loud, but over time, that silence started to sound like peace. I picked up the things I'd forgotten: painting, running, journaling, and every brushstroke, every mile, every word was like a small piece of myself returning home. Friends who once pitied me started to admire me. They said I looked different, calmer, stronger, lighter, and I guess I was, because there's something unshakable about a woman who's learned to live without needing someone to apologize. But he still tried. He texted me one night, months later, "I still think about you." I stared at that message for a long time before replying, "That's the difference between us. You think about me. I've moved on from you." And then I blocked him, not out of anger, but because the story had already ended. I wasn't interested in reading the same chapter again. The next morning, I made coffee, opened the curtains, and let the sunlight pour in. It hit differently that day. Softer, warmer, almost like forgiveness, real forgiveness. Not the kind I faked for revenge, but the kind that sets you free. Sometimes I still see couples holding hands and feel a little ache, but it's not jealousy. It's just the quiet reminder that love isn't the problem. The wrong person is. Now, when I look back, I don't see the girl who got cheated on. I see the woman who didn't let heartbreak turn her bitter, the woman who smiled, plotted, and walked away without losing herself. And that, to me, is the real revenge. Not making him hurt, but making myself whole again. Because there's nothing more terrifying to someone who broke you than watching you rebuild stronger than before. What's your idea of true revenge? Making them regret losing you, or finding peace without them? It's funny how people come crawling back when they realize silence is louder than anger. Months had passed since the night I exposed him, and life had moved on. At least for me, but apparently, not for him. It started with mutual friends. They'd say things like, "He really regrets it, you know," or "He's changed, you should at least hear him out." I'd smile politely and change the subject, because what could he possibly say that would erase everything he'd already done? But the universe has a strange sense of humor. One afternoon, I saw him again, completely by accident, at the same cafe where I'd first pretended to forgive him. He looked older somehow, tired, the charm that once filled every room now flickering out like a dying candle. He smiled nervously. "Hey," he said, as if we were old friends. I said nothing, just nodded. He asked if we could sit, and for some reason, I let him. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. He talked about how sorry he was, how he hadn't stopped thinking about me, how he'd lost everything since that night. His job, his friends, his peace. He said he realized what real love felt like only after he lost mine. I listened quietly. I didn't interrupt, because when you've already healed, their words don't wound anymore. They just echo. Finally, he asked the question I knew was coming. "Do you think you could ever forgive me?" And I smiled. A real smile this time. "I already did," I said. "That's what destroyed you." He blinked, confused. I continued. "You see, forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone back in. It just means they can't hurt you anymore." He sat there in silence, staring at his coffee. For the first time, he looked small, not because I'd made him feel that way, but because he finally saw himself clearly. Then he whispered, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." And I said softly, "I know." When I left the cafe, the air felt lighter. Not because I'd finally said what I needed to, but because I realized I didn't need to say anything at all. He kept trying after that. Messages, emails, even flowers at my doorstep, but I never responded. Because the truth is, you can't rebuild something that was never real. And maybe that's what hurt him the most. Not that I exposed him, not that I moved on, but that I did it all without needing his permission. Revenge had ended long ago. Now, it was just peace, and it looked better on me than heartbreak ever did. If your ex came back with a sincere apology, would you give them a second chance, or walk away for good? There's something magical about rebuilding yourself from the ashes. You don't rise the same way you fell. I used to think revenge was about making someone else hurt. But the real glow-up? It's when your happiness starts to look like punishment to the person who broke you. After that day at the cafe, something inside me shifted completely. I stopped surviving and started living. I focused on my career, my health, my dreams, all the things I'd put on hold because I was too busy holding on to someone who never held me back. I got promoted at work, started traveling, tried new things. Every photo I posted wasn't to make him jealous. It was to remind myself of how far I'd come. But the side effect? He saw them all. And every like, every view, every silence from me was another quiet victory. People began to notice. The same ones who'd once whispered about the girl who got cheated on now called me the girl who bounced back stronger. And I didn't correct them. Because for the first time, that label didn't hurt. It empowered me. One night, while I was out with friends, I caught my reflection in the restaurant window. I looked happy. Not perfect, not untouched, just real. And that's when I realized something beautiful. Healing doesn't make you who you were before. It makes you someone new, someone wiser, softer in the right places, harder in the ones that matter. Of course, he couldn't handle it. He started watching my stories with fake accounts, liking old posts, showing up at places I used to go. And every time, I just smiled, because I didn't need to block him anymore. My silence was the wall he'd never climb again. The girl who once cried herself to sleep had become the woman who slept peacefully without waiting for anyone's good night. But here's the secret. People don't tell you about glow-ups. They're not about changing how you look. They're about remembering who you were before someone convinced you to shrink. And once I remembered that version of me, the fearless, confident, loving girl I used to be, there was no going back. So when I looked in the mirror one morning, dressed for a new day, I whispered, "You don't need revenge anymore. You are the revenge." And maybe that's the truest thing I've ever said. What's the best kind of glow-up? Emotional, physical, or both? It happened on a random Sunday afternoon. I was out shopping with a friend, laughing over something silly when I saw him. At first, I almost didn't recognize him. The man who once made my world spin now looked ordinary. Maybe even smaller than I remembered. His clothes were wrinkled, his smile forced, his eyes empty. He saw me too. Our eyes met for just a moment, that quiet, heavy kind of moment where everything you ever felt flashes back, then fades just as quickly. He walked over, hesitant, like he wasn't sure if I'd even acknowledge him. "Hey," he said softly, almost breathless. "You look great." And I did, not because of the makeup or the outfit or the smile, but because I was finally happy without pretending. We talked for a few minutes, just small talk, about work, life, mutual friends. He said he'd been trying to get better. He mentioned therapy, new routines, regrets. He didn't say my name much, maybe because it still hurt too. Then came the line I'd expected but still wasn't ready for. "I wish I'd never lost you." I paused, looked at him, and for the first time I didn't feel pain or anger or even satisfaction. I just felt peace. So I said quietly, "You didn't lose me. You let me go." He stood there, speechless. Maybe he wanted me to say I missed him. Maybe he wanted a sign that some part of me still belonged to him. But there was nothing left for him to claim, because I'd already given every broken piece of myself back to me. He smiled weakly, said, "You've changed." And I smiled back. That was the point. As I turned to leave, I realized something. Closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you stop needing one. And that was my moment. Quiet, simple, final. When I walked away, my friend asked if I was okay. I laughed, better than ever. And it was true. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't the plan, the exposure, or the heartbreak. It's walking past the person who once destroyed you and realizing they no longer have the power to touch your peace. He watched me leave. I could feel it. But I didn't turn back. Not once. Because turning back would mean there was still something to look for. And I'd already found everything I needed within myself. That was the last time I ever saw him. And maybe that was the perfect ending he never saw coming. Would you stop to talk to your ex if you met them again? Or just walk away without a word? They say revenge is sweet, but I've learned it's not about watching them crumble. It's about watching yourself rise. Months passed after that accidental encounter. I didn't think about him anymore. Not because I was forcing myself to move on, but because I genuinely didn't need to. He'd become a lesson, not a wound. I focused on my own world. I traveled alone for the first time. I started painting again, something I'd given up when I was busy chasing his approval. I learned to love silence. The kind that used to feel lonely now felt peaceful. And one morning, as sunlight filled my new apartment, I realized something powerful. I wasn't just over him. I was finally over the version of me who tolerated him. The girl who cried herself to sleep, checking his phone for clues. The girl who accepted half love, half truths, and full-time manipulation. The girl who thought forgiving meant forgetting her own worth. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, softer, wiser. Someone who didn't seek closure because she'd written her own ending. One evening, my friend showed me his social media. He'd started posting sad quotes, gym selfies, pretending he'd changed. And for a moment, I smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of realization. He'd built his whole life trying to look happy. I'd built mine actually being happy. That's when I finally understood what true revenge looks like. It's not public humiliation. It's not exposing their lies. It's not even making them regret it. It's silence. It's peace. It's waking up one day and realizing the pain no longer defines you. It refined you. Because when you stop chasing payback and start chasing peace, you win something far greater than revenge. You win yourself. So I posted one thing that night, a quote that felt like a whisper from my healed heart. Some endings don't need closure. They just need courage. And as I turned off my phone, I felt something beautiful. Not the satisfaction of revenge, but the calm of freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you faced your pain, forgiven yourself, and walked away with grace. That's the thing no one tells you. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. And that was the perfect payback. Do you believe forgiveness is the strongest revenge? Or do you think closure comes from confrontation?